All right, it's a Digital Roundtable, Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. Unbelievable. It is June already. It's almost Christmas. Incredible. Time flies when you're having fun. The pandemic seems to be on its way out. But let me say hello to the team. Dr. Butler, how are you today, sir?
Just doing fine in Austin, Texas. I should be in Brownsville with my colleagues, but I had some stuff to do in Austin that took precedent to my dismay, but I'm doing good.
Oh, well, do you mind giving us some tunes to get us in the mood for our hour to come here?
Sometimes when the night calls it a day, and I wake up down in this missing you kind of way, I remember things better left forgotten.
Very nice, very nice, very nice, very nice. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Llewelyn, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you, Andre.
Excellent, excellent. And we have a great guest today, Carolyn Chang. Carolyn, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Good to see you guys.
Excellent. I'm glad that you're here. We're looking forward to having you. Let me, for the audience, introduce you formally. Carolyn Chang is the Vice President, General Managers of 5G Infrastructure Division in the Network Platform Group at Intel Corporation. And she's been at Intel for quite a long time, 12 plus years. And prior to Intel, she was Director of Wireless Product Line Management and Senior 4G Product Line Manager at Nortel. And Carolyn has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from this little University of Texas in Austin that Dr. Butler loves so much.
Hook 'em, baby, hook 'em.
Hook 'em, hook 'em, hook 'em.
And then she also has a Master's of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So welcome, Caroline. We're glad to have you, and we look forward to your insights and your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to be with a bunch of Texans.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, let me go to our news real quick. And, clearly, I'm really excited. I'm broadcasting today from Brownsville. We're doing a big project with the city and the utility and the Port Authority and the whole region. You all know that the SpaceX is down here, and it's quite a transformation that we are helping drive here towards the city of the future, the region of the future. It's an amazing thing. Wish you all were here with me today. These next 2 days, we have all kinds of meetings. And I'm really optimistic, probably more than usual, about the fact that perhaps we're in a much better place around COVID, the economy. Things seem to be sort of coming back to a sort of an equilibrium in jobs and purchasing and all that. It seems to be stable. So I was going to ask Carolyn first. Carolyn, you work for Intel. It's a global company. Curious from your point of view, the impact of COVID the last 12, 16 months or so. What's going on in the industry. There seems to be a shortage of chips, probably primarily from, a shutdown of the supply chain and an opening up of the supply chain. Can you give us a sense of where things are and maybe any lessons learned from COVID on the industry and with your customers?
I think clearly this, what happened the last 12 months was unprecedented. No one here alive really knows how to manage it. I think the whole industry has done a pretty decent job, roll with the punch. Like I've been working from home now since March 2020, and I used to travel all the time to see customers, see my teams all over the globe, which we haven't been able to. But we managed to do this remotely. Really, initially we were thrown into this, Zoom, Teams, and we more or less, at least from within Intel, we consolidated on Teams, but still I'm doing Zoom with you now. I can do WebEx, I can do all kinds of things. And so definitely our IT department has significantly stepped up. Like what we thought was not doable, like how I'm talking to you now. I've taken so many webinars and remote interactions, and I've done all kinds of filming myself. I even have one of those little lights with stands, allow me to put iPhone on it, and I can film myself. And we've done a lot of that. What has been difficult is the ability to really reach out and touch customers. We actually have network launch. I'm on the wireless. I'm really focusing on the 5G business here inside Intel. Haven't been able to meet them. We actually brought on board an entire team in my organization. I haven't met any of them. In fact, I have hired people that I haven't yet to meet.
Wow.
And that is that's hard. For people. For some people it's probably okay, but for me it has been challenging.
Yeah.
So we're really looking forward to opening up at just because we're doing better here in US. We still have manufacturing in Malaysia, in a lot of it designs in India. They're still going through lockdowns, and so I wouldn't say that we are completely back to normal. We may feel normal here because we're taking off the masks and we have the vaccine, but not everywhere in the world. So we still
no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Johnny, where do you think we are today? And I don't know if you want to ask anything to Carolyn on that, but I'm curious. What are your thoughts last week now?
Well, I think I like Carolyn. We hired, for the first time, we had a faculty gather last Thursday with no mask, and we hired 2 faculty members that I had never met. We hired them off of Zoom, which was very, very weird. But I think, like you suggest, we're in a pretty good place with COVID. And as Carolyn suggested, people are asking different kind of questions. As you know better than me, now our electric grid is at the very, very center of politics, which is very, very new for us Texans. And also, as you know, so many business models are being changed. There's almost a constant conversation about EVs. There's a constant conversation about how things have changed. There's a constant conversation about should we take the vaccine? If we don't take the vaccine, should we be allowed to go back to work? So as the economy reopens, it is the people questions. Very, very interesting. So the technology has brought us through. It allows enterprises to continue to do well, universities to continue to teach, high schools. And right now it is a people issue in terms of how people think about not going back to work. To make things more interesting, there are so many people that I know in Austin, the housing are being bid at 200, 300,000. And they're just selling their homes and moving, and they will work remotely. So it is interesting, as we always say, that the business models will change. As 5G gears up, then we're looking forward to other changes in 5G. And of course, one interesting thing that's happening, I might add, that I was talking to some bankers, I've been looking at bankers, a lot of people have not paid their house notes. And the small bankers are sort of interesting. What will happen if the big banks come and take them over? So they're trying to balance their housing investment with other kinds of a commercial kind of investment. So there's a lot of things going on the business side, but it's good to be without a mask again.
Yeah. Llewelyn?
I agree with all that. I'm so pleased not to have to wear a mask and be able to go out and see what people look like. Not sure what sort of situation we're in. On the one hand, the pandemic in America is pretty well behind us, unless there's a new wave occasioned either by a huge mutation or by something else. That is behind us. It's beginning to move into the rear-view mirror. But there are many problems it has left behind, including unpaid rents, accumulated electric bills. Your friends across the way in San Antonio have 105 million in unpaid electric bills, which is a substantial amount of money they may never see because people just won't be able to pay them because they move the money elsewhere or don't have the money. Likewise, with evictions and rents, unpaid rents, we may see a surge of homeless people, or we will see a lot of landlords go into insolvency because they haven't been paid and cannot collect. So that's not a pretty picture. Meanwhile, there is a big, new, serious problem which isn't subject to any kind of political or economic fix, and that is the drought in the Western states. It is huge, it's growing, it's getting worse. Even as we speak, they are enduring record temperatures all across the West. This augurs poorly for the future, with more wildfires, but particularly I'm concerned with the lack of electric production from the hydroelectric plants, largely in the Colorado and Columbia River valleys. Both Grand Coulee and Hoover are likely to stop producing, and many, many other hydroelectric producing dams, which will have an effect and a knock-on effect towards the east. We don't know how severe, but remember, if you've got very, very high temperatures, you also have very, very high electric consumption as people seek to ameliorate the condition. And it's a very grave situation, much covered in the media of the West and little covered in the media of the East. I've been researching this was a project I made for the United States Energy Association, and I am appalled by how little recognition of this impending disaster there is east of the Mississippi. I've lost you. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Andreas is muted.
Oh, I apologize. My apologies. Thank you. Thank you. So as you all know, we track a lot of things here, and you know, we track smart energy and smart cities and smart buildings, and we track telecom and 5G transformations. And we're lucky enough to have Caroline with us today, who runs the 5G network business at Intel. And there's a lot going on, you know, and I've been preaching about this for a long time, but I'm curious, Caroline, your take on some of this news that we'd like to share, and then some of them which are particularly Intel news. So rumor has it that Amazon has a new product called Sidewalk that they are introducing quietly. Is sort of a new internet service provider. Woo, I don't know what that means. And I also see that one of your competitors, Qualcomm, is boosting an entire new product line for IoT chips. And probably, you know, on this next headline, Dish starts taking signups for its 5G network. Maybe Dish is a customer of yours. Verizon telematics unit is shifting finally from 3G to 4G. AT&T puts the cable companies on notice with fiber. So AT&T is betting big on their fiber business. Seems like that's what Verizon was doing 10, 15 years ago. Wonder what's going on there. And then Cisco has unveiled Edge 5G routers. And maybe those are all also Intel chips inside for their gateways and industrial IoT. And then interestingly enough, Intel has created something called the IPU, the Infrastructure Processing Unit, to optimize compute resources. And then also Intel has announced a partnership with AWS to deploy private CBRS networks in California school districts. Caroline, what's going on with 5G? What are you guys up to?
So the 5G infrastructure has definitely been rolled out, and we see a uptick in the infrastructure demand. There's definitely we see for example, the C-band auction is about $80 billion that was generated for the government. So we see the infrastructure demand definitely up. I mean, Ericsson just released a mobile report out. I think it's like 59 million subscribers. Maybe I'm even off a zero. I just briefly glanced at it this morning. The second thing that I thought that was very interesting, alluded to what you just described, Qualcomm issued a whole bunch of IoT devices. The 5G is starting to go beyond the consumer space. It goes into private network, goes into the enterprise, digital transformation, industrial, retail, venues, whatnot. So you're alluding to one of the things that we're working on. We announced with AWS to build a private CBRS network for an underserved elementary school in Sacramento. That is a very nice blueprint how we think that connectivity can change lives. That is a project that our team took on, was actually with funding from an Intel pandemic relief fund. So Intel does have a pandemic relief fund to give back to the society during this unusual period. So so that funding came out, and we outfitted the school and the surrounding neighborhood so that the kids have Chromebooks. They have the virtualized RAN to serve the network, as well as video analytics. So it allows the remote and hybrid education becomes a much more rich experience for our children. What we hope to do is take that blueprint, expand that through the rest of the state. And actually, we just wanted to also look at public nationwide. The FCC does have some emergency relief fund. I think about $7 billion-ish. I was just told that the state of Texas also have similar type of funding for our schools. So we're looking at that. It really is to establish a blueprint and see how we can scale that beyond one school to others. We wanted to see how connectivity and compute can help through make this learning much more fun, much more rich.
Sure. Yeah. Guys, any questions for Caroline?
I have all sorts of questions. Caroline, how universal when will 5G be? It's a peculiar situation where we haven't succeeded throughout the country in deploying broadband yet. Will 5G suffer from the same kind of slow development out of high density areas?
Well, hopefully not, because I did live through 3G and 4G. Luckily, some of the things that's interesting is that 5G has a much more diverse use cases. So fixed wireless is one of the examples that 5G is changing, because 5G does have a wide variety of spectrum. So millimeter wave is one that's very well used for fixed wireless, and small cell that's really coming off for more of a dense urban, and millimeter wave really well done for indoor. So if you look at some of the dense urban area, that could fit because of the wide variety of spectrum. The other thing you mentioned, like you could look at the rural areas, how will 5G benefit them? So there's a lot of incentives coming from the US government as well as other governments, including EU, to roll out 5G into rural areas. So recently, there's another announcement that we are part of. It was a T-Mobile, Microsoft, Intel, VMware, Dell, and MDocs actually built out a 5G in a farm in Eastern Washington state. It's out of a 5G open innovation lab to collect all the sensors from the farm and to improve the productivity in the farm. We're probably going to do more of that. So to really look at 5G and provide connectivity to rural areas, provide connectivity to dense urban, underserved areas like the schools that I mentioned, but also to look at collecting the sensors, like the farm situation. I think we're looking even at some of the vineyards to allow some of the modern technology to really ignite the productivity gain. Logistics is another big one. Trucking industry is using some of these oil and gas, previously unconnected sensors, and workers gets connected. I think that's probably one of the key focus. One of the key focuses, the 3 pillars of 5G. So,
I agree. I think it's going to have the biggest impact on enterprises. I think if you go back and look at the television, people are excited about the television and how, nobody has to go to school anymore. It's going to increase this and increase that. But let's remember that all kids are really, really sort of at risk until they kind of get their feet on the ground, both how they feel about the world and et cetera. My question is this. If I think, and I do think that it's going to have a great impact on business enterprise, what I mean by that is where people live, where they can start an enterprise. One of the great things that's happening in Texas is that the wealth is moving back to small cities, right? So my question is, have you thought about all of the new business models that we've talked about on this program so many times that 5G will impact? And when business models are impacted, it means where people work, do they go to work? You can have an enterprise anywhere now because the movement of time and space is very, very fast with 5G, and 6G is coming around now. So how do you think about the impact of enterprise? That is, people purchasing your products for new enterprises anywhere in the world, and then just doing business, whether it's information kinds of businesses, right? Whether it's a new way of selling cars rapidly, where the EVs just arrive at your house like they're doing now. How do you think about the business models for 5G? Much like we thought about the business models for interstate highways that changed where we lived.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think that 5G, if it's done appropriately, number one is the deployment model. Number two is where you, the business model that you described. To me, business model actually means that you transform some of the CapEx to more OpEx. The way that cloud works is more of a subscription-based model. You don't have to pay upfront for a lot of CapEx, but in return, you get you pay OpEx. So a lot of people are thinking about it. I think we're still at the early stage of how to make it work. But back to what you're saying is that maybe after this last year and a half, and people realize, hey, I don't really necessarily have to be at a physical building where my work is. I could work remotely, just as effective. So that would mean demand a lot of high bandwidth. AR, VR is probably not the same way that we think of. AR, VR maybe really apply for learning. Maybe even, telehealth has becoming mushroomed. Like, we never thought telehealth would be so fastly adopted, but it has been. During the height of the pandemic, people didn't go to the doctor's office. Instead, they applied telehealth. So that rapidly changed that particular vertical adoption. So I think 5G will be an enabler to allow people to work remotely, business conduct remotely, and some of the things, distant learning becomes more fun, AR, VR become reality. So, just like the fact that in the case that we did for AWS, we didn't just put in connectivity, we're putting real-time video analytics, is to help to understand how our kids are learning. And then we should be able, there's no reason why we cannot apply a telehealth application to this, because that reaches the surrounding neighborhoods where the school is. Why could you not provide some education programs above and beyond what the school offers? Could it be a more interactive experience for the kids? They can learn not just from the teachers and the staff, they can learn from the best teachers in the world, right? To teach them some special Spanish or dancing or musical instruments. So I think the possibility significantly increases. One experiment we did was early on, before any of this happened, the education we did was actually in China. it was to allow the native English speaking teachers that typically showed up in the major cities in China. For example, Shanghai, they can afford to have Native American speaking English and teaching the kids. But the distance, like if you go to remote villages in China, they can't afford it. So we were putting out 5G connectivities, we're putting out videos and a real interactive, allow those kids to have the equal opportunity as the kids in major cities. So those are some of the things I think, John, you were alluding to. Really start democratizing the opportunities for the next generation through technology.
Yeah. Caroline, it seems like, we preach in this program a lot about digitalization, decentralization, decarbonization. And I can't think of a better company than Intel as the sort of the flagship of always driving, the consumption of innovation, helping customers understand new ways of doing things, breaking rules, trying new technologies and ways of solving problems using your compute. It seems like the cloud is here to stay forever. Data centers are growing like crazy. Everything is moving to the cloud. At the same time, it seems like the compute is moving to the edge more and more. And so you guys are founding members of Fog Compute and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take of where this is heading? I mean, it seems to be like, microprocessors are going to end up everywhere on my lamp, on my table, on my glass, because I want AI in it. Is that what we're talking about? What does the world look like 3 to 5 years from now?
I think that's what you just described, right? I mean, that's why there's a car shortage, because there's a microprocessor shortage, and you can't have a car these days without a microprocessor. I mean, one of the reasons you mentioned the announcement of IPU, is that, right? You compute used to be just that, it's a compute, CPU, but CPU is more than that now. So there's a lot of storage demand, connectivity demand. You ship that away from the CPU and put it in the IPU, infrastructure processing unit, to offload. So CPU does the general purpose and the IPU does all the specialized functions. So it's no longer just a general purpose. It has all the storage, and just even like Dish is an example. So is Dish our customer? Yes, Dish actually did announce Intel being that, and being a major supplier to them. And they're building a cloud native open 5G network, the first one here in the United States from the ground up. And it is connected to the cloud. It's compute everywhere. Every place where there is a dish, there is storage, there is a lot of compute, in addition to 5G connectivity. That opens up a whole new spectrum of application you can run. Like everything I just talked about, tracking the trucking, understanding the fish spoil halfway through, what's in that truck, sensors. My favorite thing is I want to make sure my Pinot Noir arrives, with the right years of grapes and all of that good stuff that comes with it. That's all becoming enabled by technology. My world, connectivity everywhere enables the best compute. Cloud is everywhere, all the way out to the edge to my home. And when I need it, it shows up. When I don't need it, it goes away, and I don't get charged for it.
Right.
Yes, that's interesting. Let me just say that these are also learning algorithms. It's not that they are just, before we just told a computer what to do. Now they are learning algorithms. Now, as we move toward this brave new world, and we have mentioned this before, but didn't get right into it. This is a lot of electricity that's going to have to be needed. If you look at data centers, they take a lot of electricity. If you look at the backup for data centers, they take a lot of electricity. As we move toward these learning algorithms, which would tell us different models of what to do in the future, right? Whether it's what wines we should drink or which plays we should call in football. Do we have to depend, and this is for both Andreas and Cal, on the grid that we have? I'll put another way, can we depend upon the grid that we have now, which I think is running on 1920 technology because people are still pulling levers. So one thing that's happening is that, as we look to this brave new world, where are the railroad tracks? Will the railroad tracks be there? And the analog, that's the analog, if you will, for the, well, not an analog, it's a comparison, if you will, for the grid. So Caroline, how do you guys think about billions of Internet of Things that's going to hook up, right, to 5G? But in the end, 5G needs, wireless needs electricity. Have you thought about the impact on the electric grid? As I sit here listening to the fact that here in Austin, we've got to turn off all of my lights here. It's as if I'm in Vermont or somewhere. It's a disgrace for Texans have to put up with such like this. So Carol, what do you think about that?
I'm not a grid expert, so I'm going to refrain from addressing it. But what I could address is that from our side, what your term is energy management. So we're very conscious that 5G needs to have a very sound energy management. We have actually, I think yesterday, Rakuten, another one of our customers, announced that they have a project with us using AI to do energy management because the network does consume electricity, consume energy, but you can smartly manage it by understanding the network does not run on the peak all the time. So when it's not run on the peak, and if you can predict it because of the network AI aspect, you could actually put a CPU on a different lower power state. Every CPU has different power states. Whereas in a low power state, it actually consumes much less energy than a peak. But you need to tell them ahead of time because 5G has a very stringent latency requirements. So you do have to forecast, you do have to predict. And if it needs to high consumption, meaning that you need to do a lot of compute, you need to bring it out of the low power state. So all of these can be managed through AI. So those are, I know we're not the only one that's working on it. A lot of other people working on it. I'm sure my alma mater, UT Austin, has research going on at how do you using AI to help you predict the demand, and therefore you generate more or less, you consume more or less, but you forecast it so that you don't impact what you need. So we need to use some of our intelligence, our compute intelligence, to help solve this issue.
Yeah,
the person, we still have the person pulling the lever on the grid. It's not completely.
So that needs to.
That is the reality that we face with.
That also, if you totally automate the grid, you introduce a level of vulnerability at a time when warfare is electronic, and so you may be open grid up to certain vulnerability. No doubt that can be dealt with in time. But I'd like to ask Caroline, what is the room in this brave new 5G world for small business? Many years ago at Sandia National Laboratory, your founder, Mr. Graves, was speaking, and he was very dismissive of small business. He said, you've got to make the distinction between new business and small business, and yet small business is the backbone of the country. Is there going to be a place, not just small business that will use 5G, but will there be a place in 5G for small entrepreneurs?
I is absolutely yes. I think majority, like you said, majority of the business are small business, right? The Fortune 500 is just that 500 of them. So if you look at the world's majority of the business are not large business. So 5G is meant for democratizing the compute and takes the compute everywhere, including the SMBs. One example that I can give you is that last year we actually announced a partnership with one of the large Indian company called Reliance Jio. It's a conglomerate owning many industries, retail shops and so on, and they also own a telco carrier, Jio platforms in India, and majority of their customers are small. I mean, a mom and pop business. One of the stated collaboration goals is to put these mom and pop shops on 5G, on connectivity, on digital transformation. You could not get smaller than what they talk about. It's literally mom and pop selling at the street corners.
My question was rather directed, will in the build out of 5G, there be new young companies building out, having part of the action, or will all the action belong to the established telecommunications?
I see. I misheard you're not talking about the consumption side. You talk about the building of the 5G.
Part in the action, a part of the infrastructure of 5G.
No doubt. Yeah. So that's, in fact, if you look at some of the things that we're doing, we call them Open RAN, which is to offer, strengthen the US-based companies. We have a lot of smaller companies here, Parallel Wireless, JMA, Altustar, Mavenir. So by segregating the software and hardware, you bring them, giving them a piece of the action on the infrastructure bill. In addition to that, I mentioned something called a 5G Open Innovation Lab. This is a consortium that we co-founded with in the state of Washington with T-Mobile and Microsoft and Dell, VMware, and MDOS, was to provide the base platform of 5G and lots of compute and drive startups to come in and innovate, develop applications on 5G. So the things I just mentioned, the sensors, the Snohomish County farming community with 5G, those people, the company that benefit working on it, they are actually startups, small companies, getting funding, and deploying, leveraging the 5G. The 5G is deployed by T-Mobile. So yeah, that's not a small company, but the small company benefit by coming in and leveraging the connectivity, leveraging the Azure cloud networking, and write out and build out their applications. I think those are the things we can do. Like later on, you could have drones and you can have whatever, but the startup can come in and benefit and be part of the 5G ecosystem.
Yeah. There is a question. Hold on, Jenny. There's a question that I think is very apropos. This notion of 5G as a service and how that really helps that small, medium-sized enterprise. What are your thoughts on 5G as a service as a strategy, Carolyn?
I think it's brilliant. This is people been talking about it. 5G not just as connectivity and like the way that you use AWS today, right? You need it, you use it. When you don't need it, you don't pay for it. Right. You get a slice. So the whole 5G as a service is starting with something called a network slice. You don't need the whole network. You get a slice of the network with some kind of service level agreement that you can use. So those are very much so.
So basically, you're saying that there will be hundreds or maybe thousands of new carriers or service providers offering 5G services for all kinds, maybe for the marina, for the connectivity of the marina, for the boats, or maybe for the farms, or maybe for X, Y, and Z, and they will be leveraging what Dish is building or what Skynet is.
T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, right?
Right.
Yeah. But like Verizon just started offering 5G into on-premise, right? So that becomes, I think, what you described, what you just talked about, 5G is a service.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I think so. What you're saying is, Austin is a startup center, and I was at the center of that. I've done many startups. I'm director of IC Square. We ran the Austin Technology Incubator. It makes it so much easier to start an enterprise. You have to realize that 25 years ago, you had to hire people to write code. You had to hire people to do all of these things now. So can you imagine a situation where with open innovation that our new startups will have what they need, including the different kind of codes that they need at their fingertips? So, and by the way, in Texas, we call small enterprises entrepreneur firms. We don't necessarily use the word small. I remember when Dell was 3 people, when National Instruments was Jim Tressard was 2 people, and etc. So I think what it would do, it will allow the startup to do it at a much more efficient, less expensive way.
Yeah, fast track them, right? Fast track them, let them ramp up faster.
So much easier than it financially as it was just 15 years ago. What
Yep.
you need is intelligence, how to do it, how to analyze, and how to understand the relationship between data, the service that you're providing, and putting it to the consumer.
Yeah.
I think about the amazing transformation of just me. I don't use a desktop. The last time I used a desktop computer is when I was at Digital Equipment Corporation making desktop computers. At the moment the laptop showed up, I cut the cord. I was mobile. And so with 5G, what excites me about it is, I'm sitting at home enjoying my gigabit per second in my house because I have it. But now with 5G, I'm going to have it everywhere I go.
And you're untethered. You can just take your phone becomes your laptop, your computer, and right. Intel makes a thing called Nuke, which is a very small, compact thing. Like, I don't know if my kids' generation would they still use they definitely would not use desktop. They probably would not even imagine using cable. They probably just gonna get 5G is my hotspot.
Right.
Good. I think it's very, very interesting. And I think that your business also will change. Now, in that connection I've written down, is Intel interested in funding, becoming an incubator for the different kind of enterprises? If you look at what's going on in the world in 5G, are you going to enhance more than just a service? Are you going to be a provider of resources, financial resources for startups? Have you guys thought about that in this brave new world of connectivity and fast-moving connectivity?
We're already doing that today. We have Intel Capital. We provide funding. Obviously, these are strategic funding that related to our business, right? We have done acquisition, merger and acquisition. So Intel has Intel Capital is probably one of the largest corporate investment arm that we have. I'm part of the 5G Open Innovation Lab. It is a incubator up in the state of Washington, but it's not limited to state of Washington. It happened to be there because we're T-Mobile and Microsoft started it with us. It is very important, I believe, for 5G to have that kind of mentality that the good things don't just come established. You have to look around the curve and to see what's happening. That's based on that principle. I do sit on the board of that. I sit on the board of something called a TIP, a Telecom Infrastructure Project, which is to apply the cloud compute principles onto telco. So things are really started to go beyond just a connectivity business, but connectivity becomes an enabler for all things that can enrich the enterprise. I think Dr. Butler, you talked about why I think I like what you said about 5G is really the goal, the pot of gold is the enterprise. I totally agree. The subscription for our phones, that's a baseline. That's always been there. That's a bread and butter of AT&T and Verizon. But you can also tell for AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile and Dish, they all talked about reaching into the enterprise. That's the additional market that they should go after. And 5G was designed from the get-go to do that. eMBB, and then there's the ultra reliable, low latency connectivity, and then there is the massive IoT connectivity. It was designed to serve the 3 different pillars.
Absolutely. As your alma mater would say, what starts here changes the world, and you're doing a hell of a job.
I remember that. Of course, I remember that. I am a proud graduate from the engineering school. I didn't go to McCombs. Not smart enough to do an MBA there, but I definitely graduated from ENS. Now That old building got torn down. Now the NI built a new building. It's fantastic. I went back for a tour. It's amazing. I wish I was there when I was going through undergrad there in the 90s, but that wasn't. So by the way, NI founders came out of UT Austin. I don't know if you know. National Instrument, right? They came out of there.
Yeah, Jim Tressard, he came out of IC Square. He's my dear friend. Jim Tressard did National Instruments. He's from Columbus, Texas. And he created National Instruments at the University of Texas and working with George Kosmeski and the IC Square Institute. Absolutely. Know him well.
You know the whole history. I was surprised at I just saw the donors and it was from NI. So I was like,
yes,
wow.
Yes.
Llewelyn, you had a question.
One feels like one is intruding into a private tete-a-tete here. I apologize for that. I'm a writer and I know a lot of writers and I've known them all my life. I always, when I hear people getting hugely excited about the technological future, I'm reminded of the fact that when I started in the business, people wrote on typewriters, some wrote by hand, then they wrote on electric typewriters, now they write on word processors. But the significant thing is they are not writing any better or any worse. Fundamental ability of the human being to produce is not accelerated by technology.
Llewelyn, but you're right, but the movement of that knowledge is so fast around the world. So
that's right, it's harder and harder to get paid for it.
Yes, just think if we had your knowledge 50 years ago, how your knowledge can move around so fast on 5G now, from your living room to the depths around the globe. And remember, in the social physics of my world, it is ideas that move people. So
I worked on a newspaper, mechanically produced newspaper that sold 6 million copies a day. There is no newspaper that produces anything like that anymore because it's been undercut. They have been undercut by the speed with which the superficial part of the news can be moved and the important part of it, the body politic, if you will, is not moved at all. So we get the kind of governance we have today, partly a function of technology, which is government by sound bites, not government by intelligent discussion of the issues. Technology, I'm all for it, but it is a two-edged sword. It is not a single case to paradise, as some people, when they get a bit intoxicated with it, are inclined to convey.
Absolutely. As the great economist, sociologist Schumpeter said, change will be done by technology. I used to say, I want this sent to England and I want it there in 4 weeks. Now I say, is it there yet? After 3 seconds. So
you're happier.
So I think that you're exactly right. Models change, newspapers have changed, automobiles would change. The speed that moves people would allow them to create new kinds of ways of thinking. And of course, there's always the classics. Sometimes I just stop and go back and read Aristotle because there's a lot there. But in terms of business enterprise and sports, there's nothing like speed.
Let me take a pause.
Technology to cause you to appreciate it.
Let me take a pause and share my screen real quick to do my duty on sharing our Digital 360 Summit. Hopefully you can see this. The event is coming August 31st to September 2nd, and you all have spoken there before, and I want to thank you for that. Here are the companies that I spoke last year, and I want to thank Texas State for sponsoring the Digital-Roundtable. Let me come back to Caroline. Caroline, there's a lot of things going on also that are really interesting around the notion of the infrastructure in the future of sort of IT. IT used to be sort of, maybe dealing with the call center and dealing with a few things. and obviously the computers and fixing the computers and the word processor and this and that. But IT more and more looks like how Intel, right? Intel is run by technologists. Technologies are making the decisions of things every day about the company, about the future, about the strategy, about this and that, right? And most companies used to be companies that, you know, the business guys knew the domain expertise of the business, whatever it was, energy, water, X, Y, and Z. And the IT guy and the IT lady were just an afterthought, a necessary evil to have email, to have things. Do you see in your conversations and in the way people approach you guys at a strategic level, companies wanting to transform themselves into this digital phenomenon, what we're witnessing, and how do they become more and more driven by technology with their customers in the middle of it, like Intel does? Do you guys have these conversations?
I don't know if I see that directly the way that you describe, Andreas. What we have been polling the CIOs, again, looking at do you want 5G? Do you need 5G? What are your decision making on 5G? And one of the overwhelming responses, yes, and they do see connectivity 5G in addition to Wi-Fi, which a lot of CIOs are already very familiar with Wi-Fi or SD-WAN. They do see 5G as a very complementary technology, as a technology they wanted to have in coexistence, because it's like outdoor wide area, they would need 5G, more deterministic, they would want to have 5G. So we do see this being part of the conversation a lot more. Like the last survey we just did a month ago was, I think it was was greater than 50% of the CIOs anticipated use up to 10% of their IT budget for connectivity, especially for 5G. So you see a lot of that becoming a language. But I don't know if I have enough experience to confirm what you describe it, simply because of the world that I live in is still very much a wireless and 5G type of world.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting comment, Andreas. I think what you're asking is the IT and business side converging. One of the problems, for example, with universities is that there should be a business side in every college. It should be in music with classic guitar so we can commercialize stuff. It should be in engineering. So my class is usually 1/3 sciences, 1/3 business, right, and 1/3 liberal arts. So what happens then is that when you combine these things, we might have to redo universities in the future. So we don't educate starving artists. We tell people, if you play classic guitar, this is how you do this. The inventions do not come from business school. They come from biology. They come from engineering. They come from the sciences. So all of this will combine because the products that's being produced will be smart. You cannot manage a product unless you understand how smart it is. One of the great things that we need to do in management, for example, is to make it a data science kind of interpretive sort of a discipline. So I see a convergence between all of that in the workplace on who you hire. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Johnny, especially about medicine. I'm just starting a new YouTube channel on the use of radiation in medicine, and you're so right in those what you said.
Yes. Well, thank you, sir. I like that you agree with me.
So Carolyn, you did something.
Write it down.
Then we can both treasure.
Carolyn, you said something that I think it was really important that I want to maybe finish up on with your remarks. You mentioned about the hotspot and 5G and the need to go to Starbucks to get internet access. It's not going to be there anymore. With 5G, I am the hotspot, and I can have all my friends access. So I remember the first time that I saw the Verizon MiFi or the AT&T MiFi, whichever product it was. Maybe it was created at Intel, which was a combination of 3G and 4G with Wi-Fi, right? And I see that as the phenomenal boom, right? Not just 5G on my phone, but maybe a standalone device that I carry around that has 5G and it has hologram and it has more GPU capacity, and it's really, you know, I put it anywhere and we're all connected. Is that something that you see happening that takes over the phone itself maybe at some point, and the phone is just about voice?
Could be. I don't have the but it seems, I mean, the way that the bandwidth is working really depends on what the operator put out, the carrier put out as a package.
Right.
But in terms of technology, yeah, the bandwidth is large enough to be shared, you know. The Gen Zs and definitely trending that way. Like, people don't really go stuck with a core at all.
Right.
You know, their devices, they're streaming. They use that for study, for watching TV, and that's how they get their news. That's how they get their education. It's I don't know if I would bet on it. I'd probably say, yeah, maybe not with my generation, but definitely with our kids. I don't think they were ever stuck in the office and using a desktop for anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think ultimately, as John says over and over and over, it's all about the business models and the fact that many people today are probably trying to figure out how to leverage the current infrastructure, you know, 5G, the cloud, this and that, to create a new business, to solve a specific problem that none of us is thinking about. And it's that entrepreneurship spark that really, you know, helps transform, you know, with the gig economy. I mean, can you imagine, John, where the gig economy is going to be 5 years from now with 5G?
I think it's going to be tremendous. And you're talking about going from the laptop. When I get my fold telephone, when I get my Samsung 3, I think it's protected fold telephone. It'll be just as good as my laptop. Mm-hmm. And I think what would happen with the gig economy is that people would be able to go where they need to go in the gig economy. That is, you would say it would like to be a placement service instantly. I need X number of servers right here. And you come. It won't be, I work for this company now. They would be able to put their services out wherever they're needed in space and time. So what I see the gig economy doing, whether it's musicians, whether it's services, why should I sit in a restaurant if I'm a service person and there's nobody eating? Can you imagine they're floating from place to place, making a living for themselves based on where the population goes? So I think 5G will really, really enhance the gig economy in all kinds of ways. And as Llewelyn just said, the business model will change. Newspaper and print cannot make any money anymore because the technology has created a new business model. So I think I'm excited for the gig economy, lots of creativity. And all of a sudden, here I am, John Sibley Butler, working on my new career. I can have my guitar in every home playing live instrument with Llewelyn as my agent.
That sounds like a fun thing.
Put me in England. Put me in England.
From time to time.
Well, you know, I'd be remiss to acknowledge, Caroline, that we enjoy very much your time, and we thank you for your insights and for sharing. I don't know if you have any parting thoughts or any message for our audience.
My pleasure. My first time here. My pleasure meeting with all you gentlemen, and hopefully that 5G will bring a lot more connectivity and opportunity for all of us. Allow us to work anywhere. Allow you, John, to work anywhere you like and play guitar anywhere you like.
Thank you very much. And it's very interesting to talk to you. Very interesting and dynamic in your views. Thank you. See you guys.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Johnny, take us away.
Okay, everybody's getting out of town. On the road again. Can't wait to get back on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again. We're on the road again. Going places that I've never been. seeing things that I may never see again. And I can't wait to get on the road again. We're on the road again, like a band of gypsies. We go down the highway, and we're the best of friends, insisting that the world keep turning our way and our way. On the road again, can't wait to get back on the road again. Life I love is making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again. Andre, I see you on the road. We're all on the road. Let's get back out there and do the life.